Just double checking my connection. It didn't look like I was in here.
Replacement tender.
John, are we gonna motion to add the ICF conversation?
Nikita, I'll wait for your signal. All right. So good morning, everybody. I'll call the meeting to order. And it is 9:33. And we'll begin with the adoption of the agenda. So, do we have any additions to the agenda from the administration?
Yes, Your Worship, under item 8.9, we're asking bridge file 73047 replacement tender award be considered. And 8.10, the ICF municipal collaboration framework between the town of Whitecourt and Woodlands County.
Okay, very good.
Excuse me, what did you say? 8.9 was bridge tender?
Bridge file 73047, replacement tender award.
And which was the
And then 8.10 is
8.10 is
the
the
ICF, yep. Okay, thank you. Anything from council? Okay, Councillor Bush?
move the adopt as per here. Adopt the agenda as amended.
Thank you. Motion to adopt is amended. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, that's carried. With that, we will move on to adoption of the minutes, the special council minutes from 20th June of 2022. Anyone catch any errors or omissions in that one? Councillor Colgan?
I'll move the adoption of the minutes of special
It's on
council meeting
in front of my monitor.
June 20th, 22.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? In favor? Yep. Okay, any opposed? Carried. We'll go to the regular council meeting on 22nd of June 2022. Minutes. Any errors or omissions in those? Councillor Williams.
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes of the regular council meeting, June 22nd, 2022.
Okay, very good. Any discussion? All in favor? And I don't see any opposed, so that's carried. And we'll go on to bylaw 590-22, third reading on enforcement. And that's going to be Mr. Frank.
Your Worship, members of council, at the last council meeting, you provided first and second reading for this proposed bylaw. We're asking council to give consideration for third reading.
Thank you. I know I wasn't here for the last meeting on this thing, so in comment, it looks like it's something that's gonna streamline our process and cost us a little less money, so it looks like a good bylaw. I certainly have, I have nothing other than that to say about it. Councillor Wilhelm.
So, I was the one that delayed this here just because I wanted to, if you wanted to make a comment on it, I'd prefer you were here before we actually passed the bylaw. I did talk with Lac St. Anne, Nick Gelich, and so just so you guys know, they said in 4 years, he's maybe done one meeting, and the other councillor I talked to said he's never been to a meeting, so the fact that the committee isn't going to put any kind of stress on the councillors or the administration unless it's actually required. I don't see a reason why we don't have it. I just wanted to have that information to give to council to say whether they've actually used it and how successful it was. They claim they've either neither been to the meeting or can't remember the last time they were at a meeting. So,
Okay. Councillor Cush.
I'll move the council give third reading to bylaw 590-22, Enforcement Review Committee.
Okay, motion on the floor. Any discussion on the motion? I see none, I'll call the question, all in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Okay, that's carried. That will bring us to new business, 8.1, annual fire services 2021. Sorry,
You
did I
missed
skip one over? Oh, I did too.
7.1.
Yep, I did. 7.1, Enforcement Review Committee. So we got some appointments to make as a result of this bylaw. So we need 3 members of council and 1 alternate, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Anyone wish to put their hand up? Councillor Wilhelm? Councillor Prestige? And Councillor Cush?
Alternate if you want.
Alternate? Okay. Any discussion on those members? Okay, would someone like to make the motion that council appoints, go ahead.
Sure. I move that council appoints Councillor Wilhelm, Cush, and Prestich to the Enforcement Review Committee and appoints Councillor Williams as the alternate to the Enforcement Review Committee.
Okay, thank you. You can take that all in one motion, yes? Okay. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. All right, now we go to 8.1. Woodlands County Fire Services Annual Report. Mr. Webb.
Hi, good morning, Good evening, Council. So this is the 2021 Woodlands County Fire Services Annual Report. Recommend that the Council accepts the annual report as information. I am sure you've all read it. I'm not gonna go word for word. So our statistics, the majority of our calls are mutual aid and medical response from our Fort Assiniboine Fire Department. That's a lot of calls out there. So it's a really good thing that we have an ambulance out there with primary care paramedics that are on our fire team out there. Because our ambulance response time out there is anywhere between 35 to 55 minutes. So with our team out there, that provides that extra life support for our residents. Again, the hours, the staff hours, so our Anselmo Fire Department total hours, 172 hours. Our Blue Ridge Fire, 1348. Our Fort Assiniboine Fire, 2231. Goose Lake Fire, 345 hours for the year. Anselmo Fire totally responded, response time hours is 411 hours, man hours, when you calculate everything out. Their total response, their highest response was mutual aid. So mutual aid to the town of Blue Ridge, Lac St. Anne County, the town of Mayerthorpe, and the town of Whitecourt for tender response. Blue Ridge Fire, again, 573 man hours. Mutual aid is our highest one out there, as well as fires. Our response to, again, Anselmo, Fort Assiniboine, Lac St. Anne County, and again, the town of Whitecourt as well. So our teams do respond to assist the town of Whitecourt. Fort Assiniboine, 866 hours, 32 medical response calls, which is our highest out there. So they, that's why we have an ambulance, and that's why we train our primary care paramedics and stand behind them for the MFR program. Goose Lake Fire, 84 response hours. Again, mutual aid, so they back up Blue Ridge, Anselmo, Fort Assiniboine, and they've also responded to Mayerthorpe as well when called upon for their tanker. Our apparatus and staffing, our apparatus, Anselmo Fire has a 2003 Freightliner pumper. That is due to be replaced in 2023. They also have a 2001 Ford F550 mini pumper that should have been replaced in 2021. Blue Ridge Fire, actually their pumper and tender are sitting within NFPA standards, so we don't have anything there that needs to be replaced. For Assiniboine Fire.
Mr. Webb, I'm just gonna interrupt you for a minute. Counselor Dean, go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair to Scott. Can you just elaborate a little bit on that 2001 Ford F550 mini pumper, like what kind of shape it's in? This document says it should have been replaced last year.
Yeah, the pumper, any of the engines have a 20-year life expectancy by NFPA standards.
Sure.
Right now, that pump is not serviceable and we can't use it.
Really?
Yes. So the truck we're using it as a rescue wildland crew hauler around right now.
Not for its intended purpose then?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Ford Assiniboine has a 2004 Freightliner bumper that needs to be, it's scheduled to be replaced in 2024. And then a couple of years after that will be their tender, which will be their tanker. We have started the tender process. We have spec truck. It has gone out for tender. The tenders will be back the 27th by 2 o'clock. So I believe Mr. Sean and I will be sitting down Thursday, Friday, kind of looking at them and just going through what is. Problem we're gonna have is nobody can really give us a chassis price. Freightliner and International have closed their books on ordering chassis, so they're not building anymore. So if there's none available, then we have to wait for them to open their books in mid-October, and then we have to get a chassis price, and nobody knows what that's gonna look like. And then once you get the chassis, it's gonna be 18 to 23 months to get a truck built. So we're gonna have to run these trucks past the 20-year mark. Right now, we did have Seahawk up servicing last week. There's some minor issues with our trucks. They have fixed what they can. They have,
Sorry.
They have, we'll have the reports here shortly. There is some stuff and some parts that they are sending me that we can fix ourselves. So our trucks are actually in very good shape. It's just that the years are coming on them. The other truck that we do have to look at that should have been replaced is the 2001 F550 mini pumper at the town of Whitecourt. So that's another truck that we own that we have set in the Whitecourt Fire Hall. So that's something that I'm not sure, we'll have to work through it with the ICF agreement and see how that goes. Things we've accomplished, our pursuit of excellence this year. So last year in 21, so the acquisition of the Pembina pipeline grant for $10,000. The Woodlands Fire Committee, so that's our fire chiefs and deputy fire chiefs, have come together and we built a standard spec for all our bunker gear. So we now have bunker gear pricing that's set for 3 years with Associated Fire with a standard. So there's we're not going through the process of, well, I like this, I like that, I like this. We've set the standard and this is what it is, which helps us with our cost sharing. Sharing the resources between the departments, which has gone really well in the last year and a half. We have firefighters that need boots, so the team reaches out to each other. Hey, I got a pair of boots at Blue Ridge. Yeah, I need them in Fort, sort of thing. So we're sharing gear back and forth instead of everybody just going out and buying new for everybody. Training is done really well. Training has been held within all of our departments, taught by our own instructors. So we've kind of minimized some of our training time.
Sorry, I'm gonna interrupt you for 1 second. Are we training to that NFPA standard?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you.
With access to Bellamy and that, and the fire chiefs and deputy chiefs getting monthly budget reports, they're really conscious of the residents' tax dollars that they get to spend. So they're making proper decisions on what to spend and what not to spend, and they reach out. We reach out as a team. We have monthly fire chiefs meetings. We reach out as a team and say, you know what, this is what I need. I need foam. Who else needs foam? If we get a pallet of foam, it's cheaper, and we just split the costs out. So it's not individually bought now. It's group bought now. So which is awesome. We've gone through some review and rewrite of some standard operating procedures. Again, those have to be brought to you guys, so they're in the play there, but they haven't been completed. Each department has maintained a high decor within their communities and positive participating in community events. I can't say enough about each of the departments in their communities. If there's a function, they open up their hall, they bring the trucks out, they participate. They're diehard community members, which is amazing. We also acquired 4 departments acquired the 36 air packs and 102 bottles from Scott from the RFP that was brought in started 2018, which was completed in 2021. The Woodlands County purchasing policy, I think that's been brought to their attention more than once. And we need to follow it, and this is the policy, and this is why we stick to it, and there's reasons for it. So it is being followed. And then just building a relationship with the County of Yellowhead, the MD of Greenview, the Big Lakes County, Barhead County, Lac St. Anne, to ensure that our ICF mutual aid agreements are met and in place, so that we understand what we can provide and what they can provide to us. And some awards and achievements for the last getting caught up. So the Alberta Emergency Services medals, I had the pleasure of presenting Mr. Williams with his Monday night. Dustin wasn't there, but Dustin's medal is waiting for him. And Captain Ryan Wilson on the Blue Ridge Fire Department. So that's 12 years of service. We also have 20-year service. These are the federal medals. Charlene Hagman, Robin Hagman, and Otto Stensrud from Anselmo Fire Department. Their medals are not in yet. We haven't got the federal ones, but they will be. They're getting their 20-year certificates on Monday night. Mel McLean and Kai Christensen from the Blue Ridge Fire Department will be getting their 20-year medals as well when they come in. Jerry Schulte and Jeff Schulte will be from the Fort Assiniboine Fire Department will be getting their 20-year medals when they arrive. And Tony Lashik, who's retired from the Goose Lake Fire Department, never got his, so I ordered his medal as well. And so when his medal comes in, we'll have to make sure that's presented to him as well. And then last year we had Kai Christensen actually retire from the Blue Ridge Fire Department. And that pretty much wraps up our 2021.
Okay, thanks very much, Scott. Are there any questions to Mr. Webb? No? Okay. I've got one quick question. So our ambulance that's up there, are people staffing that ambulance trained to the same standard as the people that would be on an ambulance normally?
Our staff up there are primary care paramedics registered with the Alberta College of Paramedics.
So is that a yes? Okay. Sorry, I don't know the standard
No.
specifically, so. And I know this has been an issue. Now, we can't transport patients on that ambulance, correct?
No.
Your worship, and then I need to correct that is a first response unit. It is not an ambulance.
Sorry, I shouldn't have said ambulance, yes, let's
Sorry.
correct that. Yeah, first response unit. Okay,
Yes, we cannot transport.
and that's because it's not part of that system. That
Because it's not
doesn't-
part of
Doesn't
AHS.
work very well.
That's right.
Okay, good. That was my only question, I guess. So with that, I understand you're moving on to a different opportunity. So I'd like to, on behalf of council, thank you for a year and a little bit and the effort that you put in and the changes that have been made. I think we've seen some really good progress in the emergency services end of things under your guidance. So I'd like to really extend a thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And wish you well.
Thank you very much.
Okay, with that. Sorry, anything?
Well, I just want to say thanks, Scott.
Okay, Councilor Krestich.
I'll make a motion that council accepts Woodlands County Fire Services 2021 annual report as information.
Okay, thanks very much. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. All right, thanks, Scott. All right, that'll bring us to 8.2, Rural Connections Grant. And this will be Heather Anderson. Good morning, Heather, how are you?
I'm good, your worship, members of council, good morning.
Good morning.
So before you are proposed changes to the previous block party grant and name changes as well. At the June 2nd Governance and Priorities Committee, they moved to send it back to Community Services to rename it. We did that at our June 16th meeting, and those proposed changes are attached. We've got a great name change to the Rural Community Connections Grant. I think it covers the feel of the intent and the purpose of the grant. And we've also included, we've changed the application as well. So if you have any questions.
Okay. Any questions to amend? Go ahead.
I got a question to council, actually. I know I've got one or two residents that were waiting for this policy to come back into play, and I know that things take a little bit of time for them to come to council, and part of the grants requirements is that it needs to be applied for before the actual event takes place. I'm just wondering if this summer, if it's possible to do one or two retroactive grants for events that have happened already.
Go ahead and weigh in on it if you'd like, Heather.
I was just gonna say from a policy perspective, I wouldn't recommend that, but that,
Your worship, members of council, if the application came in and it was retroactive, we would decline it. However, they could ask that they come in front of council for a delegation to see if they'd be willing to, or council to consider providing that grant, so.
I understand where it's coming from, I really do. I'm just trying to adhere to the policy is all. Are there any questions? Anyone else wanna? No?
Other than that, I think it's great.
Okay, Councillor Dean.
It's not a question for me, but perhaps other members of council are not aware. Can you just explain the conversation you had with legal counsel about removing the permit, which attached liability?
sure. When we discussed things with the lawyers, they mentioned that by putting a permit in place and that's basically giving your approval, we needed to have liabilities would be included in that to make sure all of those are covered. And so what they said was, by giving that permit, you're giving your stamp that everything's covered, and it put the county at risk to, if anything happened, that we basically put our stamp on it and said that you can do everything. So they just suggested removing that permit aspect and focus strictly on the grant funding. And that is based, so it changes not just the purpose, but it kind of changed the nature of the policy, just to say, tell us why you wanna have a party, tell us why you wanna connect with your neighbors, which is why the name tied together at the community services meeting we talked about. We wanna connect our community, we wanna connect people within their community so they know their neighbors, they know their subdivision, they know them, so that there's more of a first name kind of relationship and connection. So that's what they suggested, to remove our liability. It put us at risk to have a permit, just to change the whole nature of the policy.
Go ahead, Councillor.
So again, just for members of council that might not have been aware of that, I just want to make sure that you guys knew that was part of the conversation and that's part of the policy now.
Okay. And we have how much allocated to this under the budget?
We were able to locate 3,000 to reallocate to this. So that's at 500 each. We could meet the few that are interested.
Okay, so with the last 2 years that we've had, certainly it would be great if people took advantage of a policy like this and started trying to reconnect with neighbors and community and everything else. It's the people that make up the community and those connections more than anything. So I'm very happy to see this in front of us in the form that it is. Councillor Cush.
I'll make the first motion out of the council repeal policy 6206 block party.
Okay, very good. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Councillor Kluken.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that council adopt policy 6210 rural community connection grant.
Okay. And any discussion on that one? No discussion. All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much, Heather. Okay, item 8.3. It's going to be the Family and Community Services Correction. Family and Community Support Services, FCSS agreement with the town of Mayerthorpe. And presenter is Gord. Go ahead, Gord.
Yeah, your worship, members of council, attached is the agreement that the town of Mayerthorpe has viewed, and we've had several meetings, both the recreation and the FCSS over the last 2 years in regards to providing funding to them for their FCSS programs, which some of our residents in the Mayerthorpe and El Selmo primarily use their services. This was held in abeyance subject to both parties finalizing their ICF agreements with their neighboring municipalities, including Lac St. Anne and the town of Whitecourt. Lac St. Anne and the town of Mayerthorpe has concluded that, and these amounts that were agreed to were actually presented back in 2019 with the previous council members, and that's why you see those numbers in there.
Okay. Any questions to administration on this one? Anyone wish to, Councillor Dean?
Sure, I'll move the council approves memorandum of agreement for family and community support services between Woodlands County and the town of Mayerthorpe for July 2022 to December 31st, 2027.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. All right, we end up at item 8.4. Skipped ahead again. Excuse me. This is the Woodlands County and Town of Mayerthorpe Recreation, Culture, and Cemetery Agreement. Mr. Frank.
Yeah, your worship, members of council, just briefly again, we've been working on this agreement since 2019, subject to the ICFs being signed. One of the original intent was to base it on users. Unfortunately, with the Lac St. Anne ICF agreement with the town of Mayerthorpe, it's a lump sum. So again, in discussions with the administrator with the town of Mayerthorpe, we sat down and this is the draft agreement that was presented to the town of Mayerthorpe Town Council and is acceptable by them. And I do want to note that it is retroactive to 2019, which we made some payments based on the previous amount, and I believe it's section, I just gotta find it, 3.3 that recognize that we will retroactive the contribution for 19 for that, based on the new numbers.
Okay. Any questions to admin on this one? Not, I'll accept the motion. Councillor Wilhelm.
A motion that council approves a memorandum of agreement beginning in 2022 with the town of Mayerthorpe for recreation, culture, and cemetery services.
Okay, very good. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that item is carried. And that will bring us to, now we're to item 8.5, municipal land management. Mr. Frank again.
Yeah, your worship, members of council, this was brought to the June 2nd governance and priority policy or committee and council reviewed the document and provided some feedback in regards to that. We basically added an application form which is attached to that policy, and pending council's discussion on any of the items on the actual document, we're prepared to ask council to recommend approval of that policy and then repeal the other policies.
Do we need to adopt just a procedural? We want to adopt it first and then repeal the others?
Yeah, and your
Yeah, I know, if this doesn't pass, then we're out of policies on the other. Yep, makes sense.
And it's actually 1/2 dozen of the others.
Right. Councilor Dean?
Just have a question on terminology, I guess. So couple different places in the table of contents and through the document talks about license of municipal lands and license of road allowances. That term license, is it effectively the same as leasing?
No, actually, there is two different interpretations of a license versus a lease. And then the legal terminology, and I believe we have a definition, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so we have a definition of a lease agreement. Is a legal contract signed between, and a license gives you temporary right of that property. That's, so you have a legal document, the other one is, and I don't want to say for the lack of term, a permit, but you have the right to use the license for that specific purpose, and that can be taken away in very short period of time.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions to admin on this one? Councilor Cogan?
Just a question on the sale of roadways. Is there any roadways in the county that were sold or have been deemed that?
Your worship, through to Councillor Copeland, yes, the answer, typically the landowner that is adjacent to the undeveloped road allowance, for the most part, right, will make an application to us. We'll evaluate it whether we need it for future use or it's redundant for, or that the road allowance or the road goes to nowhere, i.e. into a big lake or something that we would never develop it, right? So it's evaluated, then we put a recommendation to council for consideration. We also ensure that all adjacent landowners are notified, and then they're sold at, if council approves it, then they're sold at fair market value. The one that I can recently remember is the one on West Mountain or East Mountain Road of a subdivision that the road goes into a very steep embankment. And the landowners asked us to consider.
Okay, Councilor Cogan?
Yeah, just a question that goes with that is, the reason I asked the question is because there was a application made to actually to the county to improve the road allowance into a property, and I'm just wondering if it is possible for them to still apply to have that road allowance. To have a purchase of that road allowance.
Yeah, your worship, through to Councillor Coken, yes, that's possible, that, and again, we would evaluate it. And one of the things that the past council has considered, if there's an objection from one of the adjacent landowners, typically they don't proceed with it. But I, again, don't know that until the application is made.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any Councillor Kush.
I know we kind of beat around on this one a whole bunch in a couple other meetings, so I want to make a motion the council approve policy 6122, municipal land management.
Okay. 6122, municipal land management. Yep. Motion's on the floor. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that is carried, and now, because of the, just so the public understands, this particular policy now encompasses a whole bunch of other policies that were individually in place. So we are going to look for motions to repeal those policies that are all individually separate, that are now married into this one. So, Councillor Kush.
Yeah, I'll make the motion the council repeal the following policies: 1205, sale of municipal lands; 1211, use of county-owned or controlled sites for events; 3202, selling and acquisition of borough and right-of-way; 3209, licensing and road allowances; 3220, sale of county roadways; 3302, airport subdivision leasing; and 7001, purchase of land for rec purposes.
Okay, very good. Motion on the floor from Councillor Kush. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. That brings us to item 8.6. And this is the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, abbreviated as UNDRIP.
Okay.
Mr. Frank.
Yes, your worship, members of council, this was brought to the Economic Development Committee at their last committee meeting, and the committee recommended that the council be aware that the United Nations and the federal government has adopted the rights of Indigenous people, and we're looking at where council would actually adopt this for further discussion and action in regards to that, and we would provide you with either our own policy on that or follow the guidelines that are provided in the information attached.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Frank. Any questions to admin on this one? Councillor Dean?
Not necessarily a question, but like effectively how I read this is the UN has started this process, and the federal government has an action plan, and we're just following suit. And I mean, I think I speak for all the council that we certainly support this action.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on it? All right. Councillor Kush.
I move the council accepts the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, UNDRIP, as information and forward to the next Governance and Priorities Committee for further discussion and action.
Okay, very good. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. 2022 RMA Fall Convention, Minister McIver. Sorry, I'm just waiting for this to load here. Mr. Frank, go ahead.
Well, your worship, the Department of Municipal Affairs is asking if this council wants to meet with the Minister McIver, in regards to any issues, and they asked up no more than 3 topics.
Okay. Does anyone, oh, sorry, go ahead, Councilor Kush.
I mean, I'm sure everybody's on board with the same one here, but the indecisions that we keep seeing and kind of whatever from the government into this whole process on this ICF and bad policy, it's just something that we would like to probably get in front of again and see if we can have another conversation with the Minister of Municipal Affairs on.
Okay, so, Councilor Wilhelm?
Just want to reiterate that I think we're going to see some stuff coming down the legal pipeline in September. That'll be a perfect time to touch base with the minister and find out what his reaction on the rulings of those procedures will be. We only need one topic, I think, in my opinion.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's
you
maximum
don't
three,
have to
so
have-
we can have the three, up to three, sorry,
So
so.
we only have 15 minutes, so.
Yeah,
Focus it on one board one.
okay. Just wondering if we can, because another thing that I've been looking at, and I don't have any numbers to back this up at the moment, but something that I've been noticing, certainly in the way that things are going, is, and you have to go back several years. So the province downloaded the maintenance of bridges onto municipalities, and Andre, how many bridges do we have? 100 and,
I think it's 110 or 11.
yeah, so 110, 111 bridges. The bridge files are extremely costly to maintain. We've got some very big infrastructure, and if you look at, I'll use the word disparity, I guess, for some of the federal and provincial grant applications. The amount of money that's out there to apply for granting of some of the critical infrastructure is not really there at the rural level. And I think a really critical conversation, and it kind of relates to the ICF a little bit, but I think a critical topic is maintaining that critical infrastructure, not just being able to get granting for new development. You've got to hold what you have, and you've got to maintain what you have. So I'm just wondering if we can kind of add that in there as a possible, or if council would be amenable to it. Councilor Dean?
So are you talking about that specifically, or just downloading / funding issues in general?
Well, again, the funding issues in general, like, keep in mind, so if you go through the balance sheet at the end of the day, in general, you go into an urban municipality and they'll have user fees on things, they will have utilities, they will have service fees for this, service fees for that. There's a whole bunch of little columns that they can use to generate revenue or to pick up different costs within it. And the visual that I always get is a sound engineer's board with all the knobs and everything, all the little sliders. And you can push up one or two of those as they need to be. And in the rurals, we're kind of left with this giant volume knob because we don't have those other little mechanisms. And that giant volume knob is the mill rate across the board that affects everybody. And then we're locked into that 5-to-1 as well. So with the 5-to-1 ratio at the non-residential to industrial property, that ratio, if you're holding that 5-to-1, if you turn up the industrial, you have to turn up the residential. So it's really hard for, and that revenue generation around rural, I think, is a real discussion. How are we going to pay for this going forward? We've got a ton of infrastructure, a ton of bridges, a lot of money to be spent in these rural municipalities, and we're not alone. It's across the province.
So just to carry on that discussion, I think in practical terms, I'm sure the minister will have heard this message from rural municipalities, and it doesn't hurt to reinforce it. The RMA certainly recognizes this funding issue. Your analogy, it's easy to understand. There's just one source there. How deep have the discussions been from the RMA to the province, and do you think there's any recognition that perhaps the funding model could be tweaked?
Well, and I think this is a good conversation, and the reason that this has really kind of come to the forefront is some of the discussions around LGFF. So MSI is going away in 2024. They want to enact LGFF, which is the local government fiscal framework. So at the moment, they're doing consult with all the different municipalities. You're having workshops on how to input and how is this formula gonna work and you know, what's it gonna look like? And the interesting thing is they've pulled any consideration of other grants off the table when it comes to LGFF. So, and this, you know, this is what got me thinking about it, I guess, more than anything. And it is a topic I think affects rurals quite heavily. It's hard to nail down is the issue. And again, part of the other issue is, when I look at some of the people that are in the provincial end of things, and in almost any party, the amount of municipal experience on their end, the people that are running for it, they have provincial experience only.
Yeah.
And in reality, the provincial government is the one that kind of makes the rules for the municipalities that are affected by those rules, but they've never had to live by them. So there's a little bit of a gap there that needs to be filled in. That's a long conversation for this particular thing, so maybe we just better focus it on the ICF, but I wanted to bring it up, so.
Yeah, and thanks, John, that's exactly where I was going, is, you know, as Bruce mentioned, we've only got 15 minutes, so, but we'll see that we'll have this opportunity again in March, and maybe that becomes our focus then.
Okay, so does someone want to make a motion then to just go with the ICF discussion? Councilor Preston?
Make a motion that council directs administration to request a meeting with Minister McIver at the 2022 RMA Fall Convention that includes ICF as item to discuss.
Very good. Councilor Dean?
I don't know if I'm proposing a friendly amendment, but I know previous to the last time we met with the minister, we'd brought the item to the GMP meeting to kind of flesh out exactly what our strategy. Do we want to include that? Is this going to go to the GMP at a GMP meeting prior to the meeting, to this
We certainly can.
convention?
Yep, we certainly can.
Could we include that in the motion so we don't lose sight of it?
But
I'm good with that.
you want to amalgamate those two motions, or do you want a separate motion for that?
Yeah, it'd be two different motions because you're sending it to the minister's
And the other
department.
you're sending
The
us,
other
yeah.
one you're sending to.
So let's just do a separate motion at the end of that, so. All right, so accepted Councilor Prestige's motion to send the ICF to Minister McIver for discussion at the fall convention. And any further discussion on that? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that's carried. Now I'll accept.
Sure, so I
go
just
ahead.
move that we send to the GMP committee discussions surrounding the nature of our conversation with the minister.
Okay, very good. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Okay, that brings us to Woodlands County Audit Services. So this is prepared by Alicia, and go ahead, Alicia.
Your worship, members of council, before you is a request to have Metrics Group continue to provide audit services to Woodlands County for administration is recommending a 3-year term of 2022 through to and including 2024. The original motion made by council back in September of 2019 was recommending only an option to renew for an additional 2 years. All of this council has had the opportunity to meet with and work with our audit manager and the team. From a financial perspective, we are very happy with the services being provided to us from them. We've received some new articling students on the file, and we also were assigned a new audit audit manager in 2021's audit, so that prevents or eliminates and kind of mitigates some of the people getting too familiar or complacent with the file, so we're always being tasked to ensure that we're working well within the public sector accounting board standards. So any questions from council, I'm free to answer, and
Okay, and just, I'll preface it, I guess, with something. The audit end of things here, basically, for people watching, the auditors go through the organization, see how you did on spending and budget and everything, and report back to council directly. So more than anything, this is kind of a report card on how administration did with the finances and everything throughout the year. And I know in the past we had a group that we didn't get management letters from, this kind of thing, and I've seen good management letters from Metrics, and I think they've done a good job reporting. So I would certainly support hiring these guys again. Anyone else wish to? Councilor Williams?
I'll make a motion that council awards Woodlands County Audit Services to Metrics Group for a 3-year term, 2022 through 2024.
Very good, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that's carried. All right, now we have bridge file 73047 replacement tender award. That's going to be Andre.
Thank you, Reeve Council. The 2022 capital budget included funds to replace BF 73047, which is located on Range Road 64 north of Forest Creek Road. The budget was for $450,000, which included a 75% provincial grant. Tenders were let out. 3 bids were received, ranging from $212,000 to $499,000. Engineers' estimates were $223,000. MPE Engineering has recommended that the tender be awarded to Westcore Contracting, Inc. for the bid price of $212,782.50 plus taxes, being the lowest bid. Recommendations to council are that bridge file 73047 replacement tender be awarded to Westcore Contracting, Inc. for the bid sum of $212,782.50 plus tax, and that council approves a 10% contingency for the bridge file 73047 replacement tender in the amount of $21,278.25 if required. And keep in mind, Woodlands would be paying 25% of those numbers.
Okay. Any questions to admin on this one? Councilor Williams?
Like, I'm sure this is a question maybe through the chair to Andre, but if their quote's half price, is that concerning at all? Like, they're obviously probably reputable if they're recommending it, but it seems like a...
Through the chair to Councilor Williams, the engineer's estimate was pretty close to their bid. They did call, I had a conversation with them about their bid. They don't know why the other bids were as high as they were. They felt they padded theirs enough to be comfortable. Keep in mind, we're mid-season, everybody's busy, and the other bids could be if they get the job, they're making a lot of money, and if they don't, no big deal.
It's good.
Okay. Any other questions? Councilor Dean?
Certain, I have a question, but it's not related to the RFD related, but I'll ask it since I started. So the process now is that we identify a bridge that needs to be replaced in our opinion, and so we apply for a grant. And then the government decides whether or not we get to go ahead with the project.
Through the chair to Councilor Dean, each fall the province has an opening for grants to do with infrastructure. We identify what our biggest need at the time is, we submit, and the province determines if we qualify or not.
Okay. And just from a kind of a process or an understanding point of view for me, In your experience, has the province ever turned you down?
Through the chair, Councillor Dean, they turned us down this year. I believe this year there were, I think, 51 applications, and I believe they approved 12 or something like that.
Wow. So this is a pretty good example of this downloading that not only do we have to kick in 25% of the cost, but we're at the whim of another party as to whether or not we can go ahead with the project that we think is critical to our infrastructure. So just for the public that's maybe tuning in, I think that's important to know.
Yeah, and it's also an important component on the asset management program so that we're looking ahead, years ahead, on how long this infrastructure is gonna last, what it's gonna look like, and then we can plan for what's upcoming and apply for the grants as they become available. And this is something that we're working on very diligently, and I know administration's working on it, so, anyone wish to, Councillor Williams?
I'll make a motion that bridge file 73047 replacement tender be awarded to Westcore Contracting Incorporated for the bid sum of $212,782.50 plus tax.
Okay, very good. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. I think I saw Councillor Copeland first.
I'll make a motion that council approves the 10% contingency for the bridge file 73047 replacement tender in the amount of $21,278.25 if required.
Okay, thank you. And the motion's accepted. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Where are we here? Correspondence and information items. 8.10, I'm sorry. I don't have that on the agenda here, and I was going off my screen, which I don't normally do. Yep, 8.10.
Your worship, members of council, if we can take a break and we'll prepare finalize the RFD and then provide it to you, council.
Okay, so we need, 15 minutes?
Yep.
Okay, so let's take a 15-minute break. What the heck, we can get the clock up, so 10:45 we'll come back. Rick, McIver to tell us we're on break. Okay, Nikita, we're ready to go. You give me the signal and
Good to go.
we're good? Okay, so we're back from our quick break here. And we are on item, where is my 8.10? 8.10. So, Mr. Frank, you wanna take us through this one?
Yeah, your worship, members of council, I've prepared an RFD for council's consideration to discuss the ICF framework agreement. As you're aware, the majority of you were at the town of Whitecourt's council meeting on July 18th, in which they adopted the attached ICF agreement, and it was yesterday delivered by their peace officer to our office, signed by the mayor and the CAO. We provided you with the background of the correspondence or the timeline in regards to what has transpired since February 3rd, when the arbitrator released the award, and it was clear that the act under the Municipal Government Act says that you have to negotiate in good faith. Just a couple highlights, and be prepared to answer anything. When the minister first gave us the 90-day extension, I reached out to the town and said, under May 19th, the next day, to even have a third-party, non-biased legal counsel draft the RFD so that they take the emotions out of it, let that individual interpret the arbitrator's decision in regards to that, and at that point in time, I got an email back over a week later indicating why the need. It's clear in the arbitrator's award that the two parties are to draft an ICF agreement. It is not the party of the town of Whitecourt to provide an ICF agreement for consideration. There were never any discussions in regards to who was taking the lead on that. They took it on their own to do that. We've indicated throughout this process that we were not in agreement with that, and that we were following the legal process that has occurred throughout that, in which we were never successful in regards to that. I also want to indicate on July 14th, we received an email from the ADM that also reiterated the minister's position on this matter, that the town and county will work together to draft an ICF agreement. Again, it's not one party drafting the agreement, it's both parties to do that. We also indicated in the RFD that was presented to the town, there were a number of errors or a number of misleading statements that were included in there. And one was that Woodlands County did not provide any comments other than it's not acceptable to Woodland County as it takes liberty. They also suggested that I coordinate a meeting at the end of the month to provide a substantive response to the draft ICF. We provided them with 3 dates that, and we said that we were prepared to sit in a room until we hammered out a deal. So again, that information, I don't believe was relayed to the town council. The other point that I think is important, that throughout the timeline of February 3rd on, there has been correspondence indicating to them, and we provided several different drafts to them for consideration, of which none of the town of Whitecourt has ever responded to. And finally, I guess, and the more importantly, there's a number of issues that don't follow the ICF agreement, and we've laid that out in their statements, including capital costs, extra costs that were never prescribed in the award, catch area catchment area. On the census, they're using the federal, the arbitrator said use municipal affairs data. Payment of cost sharing, right, again, were prescribed. Terms and amendments shall continue indefinitely. That's not what the arbitrator said. The arbitrator said that you had to come up with an ICF, an agreement. So again, our language is very different than what they put in, and again, and we're taking liberties that we've never agreed to. I think the other thing is to, the arbitrator's award and council has forwarded to the town, the arts center, the municipal center, the number of names that it's been called over the years. The arbitrator's award under section 62603 indicates that I find White Court's request to have Woodlands contribute to the cost of construction premature, but yet in the draft ICF that they provided is they've included that we are going to construction of the proposed arts center, the revitalization of the library, and the construction of railroad crossing at 33rd Street in the town. To note that we are required under the arbitrator's decision to participate in the construction of the 33rd Street Railroad crossing when it occurs. But the other two items says it's premature, and you have to have a discussion and planning of those items before any consideration be put into the ICF agreement. And as a result of the town on July 11th passing and making a motion to enter into an agreement with Clark's Builder to build that, I don't know how you can have an agreement building an arts center in front of prior to an arbitration award that says you have to have discussions about that, and then passing an ICF agreement indicating that after the fact. So, your worship, members of council, that's my thing. So we're recommending that the council forward a letter to Municipal Affairs outlining the town of White Court's absence of collaboration and good faith in developing an intermunicipal collaboration framework and providing him with some options and solutions to resolve this matter.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Frank. All right, I'll open the floor up for any. Councilor Cush?
I just, my big, kind of talking about here, when we talked about the Arts and Culture Center, is we've been telling them since 2016 that we can't afford it. Even 10 years ago, when it seemed the money was flowing and things were good, the county was paying out more money than we could realistically afford, which got us into this financial position that we're in with our reserves. We had a survey, we had some response from our residents, a lot of the phone calls and stuff, most of them came in, and we can't afford to do this. We've told the town multiple times. The arbitrator said that this wasn't part of the ICF. And again, I just feel like this is negotiating in bad faith when they keep trying to put it out there and trying to, put it in writing, put it in somewhere else where we have to try to sign something that has an incredibly large financial impact on what we can do. It's not just, for anybody seeing, I mean, we have borrowing power, we have, what it comes out to, but when we were discussing this before, if we end up having to borrow the funds they're asking and take that out or whatever, it makes it almost impossible for us, if we need to, for major failures down the road, to be able to borrow it to fix our infrastructure, let alone build something that's more of a want for our neighbor than a need. They have facilities that they can host most of what they're doing if they kind of work it around, but I don't see any way that we could sign this ICF with the implications of what some of this could end up costing us.
Councilor Dean?
Yeah, I concur 100% that the document that's before us, it's not in our best interest to sign it. I'm just taking a little different tack, though. Wondering if council would consider taking their document and just making some notes. This, no, and sending it back to them and saying, hey, you know what? Most of this document is fine, but we certainly would identify those three major capital areas as items that we can't support and we can't sign. So just to clarify what I'm saying is, before we go to the minister, or maybe we copy the minister in, saying, yeah, we're trying to work with these guys. They've sent us a document they want us to sign, but there are areas that we're not comfortable with, and give it back to the town for their consideration and give it to the minister. And if we want to include this timeline, that's, I mean, we could at the same time, but I'd just like to reach back to them and say, look, we're not comfortable with these areas.
Okay.
Your worship, if
Go-
I can
go ahead.
make that comment, so that information has been provided to the town since the stay of proceedings has been given to them. We have further comment and said these items are unacceptable. It's a very short document after the deletions.
And I think it's important to note that, so the application for the stay, we had an arbitration, then we made an application for the stay because we thought it would be injurious to the municipality, and that was on June 27th, is that correct?
That's
The
correct.
stay was heard. So up until June 27th, if you're making an application in court to a stay, you're not going to have negotiations on something that you have a court application into. And that was clearly communicated to the town, that we weren't gonna have any comment on it until the stay application was heard. So it didn't give us a whole lot of time here, and for them to come back with this the way that they have, and I'm actually, I don't know if the area that I'm picking out of this is definitely a hot topic right now, and this major capital purchases, it's under section 4 of the draft ICF that they've adopted and then sent to us for signature. The section on railway crossing at 33rd Street, that was a clear indication from the arbitrator that we had to deal with that we had to pay for it, and we would collaborate on it. We wouldn't make any disputes about that. Under the minister's order, we've got a draft in accordance with the arbitration finding. The arbitrator clearly found that the Arts and Culture Center was not part of that. Now, in the same section here under major capital purchases, the parties shall engage in collaborative, integrated, and strategic planning regarding major capital purchase collaboration principles referenced herein will guide with the parties with strategic planning concern major capital purchases. And then it says, without limiting the generality of the foregoing, the parties shall collaborate with respect to the future planning and funding of infrastructure and construction costs associated with the construction of the proposed Arts and Culture Center in town, the revitalization of the White Court Library, and the construction of the railway crossing 33rd Street in town. Now, those first two were the library and the Arts and Culture Center. We made, I think, a very good survey. We had some very good data. We had over a 10% response rate from our residents on it, that they are not in favor of this. And this is the difficulty around this legislation. I'm not the mayor of Whitecourt, I'm the Reeve of Woodlands County. But if you're going to put legislation in place that puts the planning and development of the town and the bill for that on the backs of the Woodlands County residents, taxpayers, and businesses, then we are going to have a discussion about that with the town. They asked nicely if we would support the Arts and Culture Center. We did our due diligence. We put a survey out. We got it very clear that our residents were not interested in the Arts and Culture Center, yet here it is back in this. Now I'm definitely highlighting the Arts and Culture Center, and I think that it's important to note that I don't know if a lot of townspeople even realize that the Arts and Culture Center build has been awarded. It was done through a special meeting, so I'm not sure that people even realize it's a done deal. It's awarded. So I just I completely support the recommendation here that we communicate with the minister on this, and I believe this to be not negotiating in good faith on the part of the town with the presentation, or sorry, the passing of this without having a conversation with the Woodlands County Council and administration on it. I'll end it there. Councillor Quilkin?
Yeah, I guess from my perspective is that I do not have a history of any negotiation with this, because this is my first term, but I look at this very specifically as a, you know, we're responsible as board members or councillors for the corporation. And so what I did was I had a look at the arbitration. I laid it down beside the draft agreements that were put together by Mr. Frank and our legal counsel, and then I took the recommendation that was made at the White Court Council yesterday, or on the 18th, and I laid them down together to try to understand, you know, as a board member, the responsibility that I have. And what I found was that, for the most part, the document that was presented by Mr. Frank and legal counsel as a draft was very much in alignment with the arbitration that Ms. Howes had put together. And it, you know, even though there were some things in there that I would, as a logical thinking person, would disagree with, the understanding was that our legal team and our CAO had put together something that was in alignment with the draft, the arbitration, that the arbitrator had put on the table. That was exactly the opposite with what I was reading in what the White Court County or White Court Town Council had approved. So my question became, you know, if I can support something that's in alignment with the judgment that came down through the arbitration, and that is something that Mr. Frank brought to the table here, why is it that his counterpart at the White Court administration can't even come close? And my question then would be, does that council actually understand what they are looking at? And so for me, somewhere there's a lack of good faith in negotiation, and I've been divorced from that decision before this time. So I am completely in favor of this recommendation, because there's no possibility that I could put my signature to an agreement that I have had no ability to participate in.
Councillor Wilhelm.
So with regards to the RFD, I actually really appreciate this being put together by administration. In my opinion, the background provided in the RFD provides a very clear timeline of how we see how this negotiation or lack of negotiation has happened with the ICF. And also shows in the timeline a situation where, yes, the town may consider that at some points we've been dragging our feet. We've been taking the legal options that have been provided towards us, and we are allowed to do that. Even the minister recognized that by granting us an extension to August 4th to work this out. So regardless of what the town thinks about the legal actions we've taken the steps that were required as we felt them. We've been given till August 4th, I believe, to complete this negotiation. So regardless if the town has given us an arbitrary deadline for negotiation, it's not their decision to make. It was the minister has given us till August 4th to hammer out an agreement. I am hoping that the councillors on that side understand that we want to negotiate this. We'll work day and night to get it sorted out. But for them to set an arbitrary deadline and then sign an agreement that we have had no chance to talk to them about, and they've refused to talk to our administration about, they've overplayed their hand here. The minister has given us till August 4th to deal with this. They want to go on vacation and not talk about this agreement, and that's fallen onto their side. They walked away from the negotiating table. We're sitting here waiting to negotiate with them. And I hope the councillors and the public that are listening to this meeting understand we're ready to work to finish this off. It's not us that are delaying this from happening. It's the Whitecourt Town Council. We've got a document here. We've annotated it and sent it to them for discussion. They've told us they don't want to talk about it anymore. There are clear steps that we can take here. One, yes, if we need to bring the minister in to get them back to the negotiating table, that's fantastic. Then let's do that. I agree with the RFD. Let's let the minister know what's going on and implore him to get them to come back to the table. And two, let's keep reaching out to the town every day, finding dates that are going to make this work. Because we don't want to get put in a situation where an agreement is forced upon us. We want to work towards something. So I hope that the town council is listening right now and understands that our council wants to work forward with this. And I hope that this letter to the minister lets him know that as well, because at no point have I seen anyone in this council wanting to drag our feet. We've wanted to talk about this, and the town has not afforded us the opportunity to do that.
Thanks, Councillor Will. Councillor Dean?
The annotated copy of the town's version of the ICF that was annotated and then sent back to them, where is that? It's not in this RFD.
No, because again, it's provided to the town for consideration, right?
Could I get a copy of that? I'd like to see the annotations.
Councillor Prestige?
With this ICF and the judgment that we got from the arbitrator, some of it I agree with, some of it I don't. But the way I look at it is on the Arts and Culture Center and the library, our residents, we're spending our residents' money if we contribute to that. If we had the money to do it, we need it more in our own municipality. We have roads to fix, bridges to fix. There's so much infrastructure that we need that we don't have the money for. So why would we borrow money to do something in another municipality and have our residents suffer from it? I totally don't agree with this ICF that the town has done.
Councillor,
I guess one question here I have through to Mr. Frank, maybe we can, given that the funding that they're looking for the Arts and Culture Center, that they're trying to slip back into this ICF, we would have to borrow. If we went to borrow it and our residents did a petition or whatever against the borrowing bylaw and came back that we can't borrow, where does that stand? Because, I mean, the ICF would lock us into having to, I guess, help fund this, but if we are petitioned and we're not able to actually borrow the funds, how do we fulfill that part of the ICF?
The worship through to Councillor Cushion, supplemented with Alicia, is we would have to take it from our existing reserves, and as a result of that would put us back in further financial recovery that would be required. Oh, sorry. She wants to supplement.
Go ahead, Alicia, to supplement there.
Your worship, members of council, I was just to add, if that were to happen, there is the likelihood that your borrowing power would be exceeded, at which time we would have to write and receive ministerial approval in order to move forward with those funds. So there would be some additional hurdles and red tape that would have to go through.
Just kind of like, through this, right, you know, anybody watching, like, I know we've got a lot of points, there's a lot of stuff in here, and I've just found that through this whole process, unfortunately, the stuff that's been coming out media-wise has been very biased and kind of one-sided as to what the reporting is. The county has never disputed that we want to pay for the services. I mean, we have, like fire, the, Ellen and Jean Miller Center, the rec, everything that we use there, like our residents do use it, and we've always agreed that yes, we want to pay for those services. Like adding large amounts of capital on top of that, I just feel that if your neighbor can't fix or can't afford to keep fit or whatever, they, like if they have to come after their other neighbors to pay for their capital or pay for their buildings or pay for their infrastructure, then maybe they need to start looking at their budgets a little bit more instead of reaching our hand out to your neighbors. It's just, I you know, even aside from that, like, I know, do we have, sorry, to Alicia, roughly what the numbers are at all, like what type of impact this would have on our residents tax-wise every year for the services or the capital end? Have we got any of that from the town yet?
Through the chair to all of council, we have received some estimates only on historical operating costs for some of the years that would bring us to current. I have not received, other than in the presentation and the original forecasting that we did for council, what the impacts would be based on their presentations.
And I think I'm just gonna say one thing and then I'll recognize you, Councillor Dean. Just to that end, I think it's important to recognize that those costs through 20 and 21 were the periods where we were going through COVID, so there were not major capital investments that were being made at that time. And our real caution on this particular document is the discussion around capital infrastructure. And if you look at the 20-year capital plan, some of the things that are coming down are huge, that would be percentage-wise dumped onto us. And the other discussion that I think needs to come out on the public end is, so if you've got a development occurring in a municipality or repair or something like that, you can apply for a grant for it. So let's say it's a $3 million project, you get a $1 million grant, total is $3 million, 20% of that goes to the county under the arbitration. And are they billing us for the entire investment, including matching the grant dollars that come in? Because that seems to have been a tactic in the past as well. And this should be a net municipal contribution. So if they're building half the project on grant dollars, and there's a percentage to be given, or sorry, a percentage to be sent to the municipality to cooperate on that, it should be municipal dollars to municipal dollars. The idea of this putting that extra load on the back of one taxpayer versus the other, because reality is we cannot apply for a grant in somebody else's municipality. So we would never get a matching grant along these lines. And I think that's something that the whole legislation has not understood. You know, do you do some of these calculations based on net or based on gross dollars? There's certainly no reason why Woodlands County ratepayers and businesses need to make up the difference for some of these grants, which are substantial grants to some of these projects. And you start working those numbers and it can get out of hand. So that's a big cautionary tale, is the capital side of this. And as well, it doesn't say in this particular area that there is going to be, $7 million billed to the municipality, to Woodlands, for the construction of the center, but it opens the door to that type of behavior, and I hesitate to involve ourselves with. I don't think they've been very forthcoming, and I'm betting that a lot of residents would be surprised that the Arts and Culture Center build has been awarded to a construction company, and that the largest major capital purchase in the history of the town of Whitecourt was done and nobody knew. So, Councillor Dean.
So first of all, I want to apologize to council. I did, when I'd asked for an annotated copy, I didn't realize I skipped over it, I guess, in this RFD that was presented. I will cut myself a little slack, though. There's upwards of 50 items on this RFD. There's a lot to digest in 10 minutes that we had to read it. So, further to the recommendation that we forward a letter to the ministry outlining what we perceive as the town of Whitecourt's absence of collaboration and good faith in developing this ICF. My original suggestion to council to consider was to also include exactly what's been delivered to them already. So a question to Mr. Frank, that annotated copy, did that go to the ministry or just to the town?
To the administrator?
Yeah.
No, it goes to the legal and the administrator.
Okay, so the Minister of Municipal Affairs has not seen an annotated copy?
No,
Okay.
no, and nor have we shared any of our agreements with the municipal affairs based on the fact that we would never do that until we have a signed ICF agreement in accordance with the legislation that requires us to file that with the department.
Okay, so my question back to council, and I hear what you're saying, that's been our business practice not to set it until it's done, and the bylaw's been approved by motion. The ministry is in receipt of the town's version of the ICF. That letter that came out, the email that came out from the town staff, it included various members of the ministry. Again, I haven't seen that annotated version of what our council did. I certainly would like to see it, but I'd also suggest to council that if we're going to provide to the ministry this timeline, this sequence of events that we feel supports, the actions we've taken, I'd also like them to be aware that we have a version that we'd like the town to consider as well.
Yeah, and I think that's all part of the recommendation that the administration would actually look at providing the minister with some options and giving them some further information on how this is all gonna go. So that would actually be all part of that discussion.
So you're saying the annotated copy that our legal counsel sent to their legal counsel would be part of the package that goes to the ministry?
It certainly could be, as far as I know.
Yeah, your worship, members of council, and again, working with our legal, we would draft a letter that would include. I did have a conversation yesterday with the ADM, and he encouraged to provide solutions to the minister.
Sure.
Possible solutions, and more than one would then give him consideration for thought, right? So, and again, to say, well, this agreement is good and ours is better, right, or no good in that, I mean, that's not the solution I believe the minister would be looking for. How do you resolve this issue?
Councillor Wilhelm and then Councillor Williams.
I think just to support that, if we're gonna send an annotated copy that essentially lines out, okay, this was not in the arbitration award. This is not in the arbitration award. If these items are removed, we're willing to sign this documentation that, we're using the town's document to solve a problem as opposed to trying to create our own and then fighting with our document against theirs. We send the annotated copy and say, remove these items that were never part of the arbitration award or are in judicial review right now, then we'll be willing to sign this. But I think that provides a solution to the minister to say that as long as we're not signing a document that has items in it that are currently in judicial review, we have no problem signing it.
Mr. Frank?
Your worship, through to Councillor Williams, we've provided that option to them to say that. Yeah.
Yeah, I just mean to the minister's office as well,
No,
with their part of this.
again, trying to get a solution ahead of, so that this council is accepting of signing an ICF agreement. That was proposed to the town.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with Counselor Williams, then Counselor Cook, and then Counselor Dean.
Some of what I was gonna say got covered off by that last exchange, but the problem is the lack of communication, and now it's almost forcing us to start sending our own ICF to the minister, and that's not what we really wanted to do. We didn't. I'm not saying we shouldn't do that now, but if we could have communicated with the town, we could have resolved this or come to some sort of an agreement in a meeting versus now everything's through the minister. It's ridiculous. Like, for people watching, it's super frustrating for us because we're trying to reach out, we're trying to get something back, and we're getting nothing but a version that we have zero input in, and that's where these problems are. Now we're almost forced to do the same thing as what they are by sending that off to the minister prematurely before it's signed. It's just very frustrating.
Well, and an important note is that the reality is that our deadline is August the 4th, and it is not uncommon in any of these types of dealings that the 11th hour negotiations occur on, right up until the last hour available to them. And the reality is we still have yet to sit down face to face with council representation, administration, and legal, trying to get to the bottom of some of these things. So there's still some time to talk to the town on this, but they've got to be amenable to do it.
If I can just add one thing, that we kind of got sidetracked on the Arts and Culture Center of this. The bigger problem with it is that we haven't had that time, and we've tried, but then out in the public it really seems like we're just dragging our feet, and that's a frustrating thing. The one or two line items in there, they're big, don't get me wrong, but it's the lack of communication that's the problem. It's not the one or two line items. We need to actually have a meeting and discuss that, and we're not getting that, so that's why it's a bit frustrating for me.
Councillor Kukin.
Yeah, one of the obvious things as well, and I'll direct this through to Alicia maybe. One of the things that we have done consistently, even after the arbitrator's decision, is try to make sure that we pay our way, meaning keep up with the agreements that we had, make sure that any of the monies that we did our due diligence there. And, we've been very, very unfortunately portrayed in the media as not wanting to pay and not wanting to participate and not wanting to, both with the library and the discussions around this council table always have been, how do we make sure that we keep our services for our residents? And so I think that we've been trying to deal in good faith. We haven't agreed, we may be perceived as visibly dragging our feet, but that's not been the case. And I think that's something that the public needs to know, is that we are willing to support those things that are necessary. And we're going to continue to do that. But you can't do things without having negotiations face to face with the people that are responsible for that, and ultimately that's what councils are supposed to do. We're the leaders, we're the ones that direct our administration as to how to do things, and we've been left out of that process by virtue of the situation that is in the other chambers.
Okay, Councillor Dean.
Yeah, that clearly is the case, that, we just haven't had the opportunity, both sides haven't had the opportunity, and whatever is preventing that, I don't know. I think it's also fair to say that we had an application for a stay, and that stay was heard on, was it June 27th, is that right? And during that time, leading up to the 27th, we had indicated to their council that we were not going to negotiate an ICF. So that put a strain on the ability for the two parties to get together as well. So I think we need to recognize that. And then from the 27th, it's, you know, if you look at this timeline and when I listen to my CEO and read the emails, there's been numerous attempts since the 27th to try and get together. But I just think it's fair to say that, you know, we kind of had a pause there for about 3 months or 3.5 months. And to your point, it's not uncommon to wait until the last minute to hammer things out, and that's where we're at now.
Yeah, if I can just clarify that a little bit, the stay, just so that people understand that June 27th stay, pretty much any lawyer is gonna tell you that if you're arguing for a stay, you're not gonna be negotiating on something.
Fair
So
enough,
the-
yeah.
The pause that's there is a legal one and a process one, rather than something that we put in place. We abided by recommendations from legal on that end. And again, it's part of the process. It's a process that we're entitled to do as a municipality. So, you know, it did put some time constraints to the process, but welcome to the court system, so. And I think it's important to note too that the reason that this particular ICF is important and that we at least get the arbitrator's decision correct on this is that if we are unsuccessful on the judicial review, which I think we've got good chances, this will be our agreement. And one of the things on this agreement, and it's not a requirement by the arbitrator, but we fell into this before under the old agreement. So the old agreement had everything in it. This agreement has everything under one agreement. So the minute that you open one component of this agreement, you open the entire agreement. Throughout our entire conversations with the town, we have tried to make a master agreement that and again, I'm an image guy, so the idea was that the master agreement would form a filing cabinet, and all the other agreements would slot into that filing cabinet. Then, if you've got to renegotiate fire, or there's costs that are having a problem, or whatever, I mean, everything has to be renegotiated. It's only good practice. Absolutely everything gets renegotiated at some time. You can pull that individual agreement out of the filing cabinet. You can negotiate on that one item, and then you can put it back in. These types of things, and again, it's not a direction from the arbitrator, but it is a recommendation that these be separate agreements contained under another. And I think our history of being involved in these agreements and watching that whole filing cabinet collapse and getting into this in the first place, I don't understand why we're into and I always get the word wrong, I want to say in perpetuity. What's the
Indefinite.
Indefinitely. For this to be an indefinite agreement and everything rolled into one is untenable for any council to unwrap and deal with in the future. Town council or county council, it's a bad document in that one way. So, I had a comment over here. Yes,
I have a
Councillor Cush?
couple, personally, I know, like, you know, we talk about like the lack of communication and whatnot, and we've, I know coming through the election process, I mean, there are councillors on our side and councillors on their side too, and like, everybody's big thing was trying to get this relationship working again. But when you have stuff like this that puts a very large strain on one municipality, yeah, like, it's hard to have an active working relationship that's, you know, amenable when you gotta keep kind of looking at, you know, well, what do we have left for ours? What does this take away from our residents? I just, you know, like a lot of what's going, like, I guess a lot of the stuff that happens in the town and stuff, I know it does help us, it does do good, but ultimately this council is responsible for our residents and our county and our infrastructure. And when these large builds and large programs come up that they, you know, got their hands on, they're asking for, you can't always say yes to everything. We got ourselves into, in the past, into a kind of trend where that's what we did, just kept signing and kept saying yes. And I think a lot of the issues that we kind of run into in this is that at some point the money wasn't there and we couldn't say yes anymore. We had to start saying no. And financially, we're still at a point where we have to keep saying no. We have the municipal indicators, John, I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, municipal sustainability.
Yeah, the sustain, and on that, it's even saying that, where we are, the municipal affairs reached out and said they want to have a conversation with us about kind of where we are and how we're working. And that's in the financial position we are currently without having a lot of extra large capital expenses to add on top of that. We just realistically can't do it. I mean, it would be nice if we can figure something out, get something going for now that works, that is, agreeable to both parties, but where we can start trying to work together instead of being at, ends with each other, because this just doesn't help either party out, either, sets of residents out, and hopefully we get there.
And to add clarification to your point, the three municipal indicators that have continually flagged in the last little while with the county have been: your infrastructure is aging out, you're not spending enough on your infrastructure for replacement, and the non-collection of taxes. So those are the three major areas that we've run into. And the reality is there's investments that need to be made in the county infrastructure, in primary critical infrastructure that need to occur. So anyway, I'd like to wrap this up, and I'm gonna make a motion in a minute, Councillor.
You're gonna make a
Dean?
motion, or you're gonna call for one?
I was gonna make one. but-
Okay, just to that point, I agree, let's go, move forward, move off this item. We've made quite a few references to people that may be watching, listening to this, meeting, and we've used the term, judicial review a couple of times, and if I could just ask for a minute, for those that are listening, the items under judicial review are potential capital costs that would be incurred by Woodlands County. Our legal team has told us that the arbiter was acting out of jurisdiction. So, and that is the only thing within the act. If you look at the act under the arbitration, the only thing that a party or a municipality can contest is something that's, in their opinion, out of jurisdiction. So that's why that proceeding is taking place. And again, you guys know this, but for those people that are listening, they don't know.
And to follow up on that too, I think it's important to note that the judicial review filed for by Woodlands County is not the only judicial review triggered by this type of thing. There were several arbitrations that occurred throughout the province as a result of the legislation. There are a couple of judicial reviews that are going on. There's definitely the legislation's caused some challenges, absolutely. And again, I think it's important to clarify that when you talk about the spirit of the legislation, the idea that, and the background on the legislation is you reduce the burden on taxpayers by reducing the duplication of services. There's lots of municipalities that are, we don't want to get along with them, so 2 miles apart, they build 2 multiplex centers. Absolute waste of money, it's ridiculous, I totally agree. And that's what this legislation is designed to do, is stop that. I don't think the legislation was intended to go quite as far as it did, and it doesn't describe what even contains an intermunicipal service is. And I think that's again, it's based on a good principle, and I support the idea of it. I think the construction around it needs a little bit of work, and it's brand new legislation, so it's not uncommon to have a few things come out of this. And I think it's important to note that while this may seem like it's all happening here, it's not all happening here. There is a lot going on in the province right now as a result of this legislation. And so, with that, I was going to make the motion that council forward a letter to the Minister of Municipal Affairs outlining the town of Whitecourt's absence of collaboration and good faith in developing an intermunicipal collaboration framework, and also that we forward suggestions and options to the minister for
Consideration.
a resolution and a timeline, as the timeline information as well.
Can we add the annotated copy that we sent to their council?
You can add, yeah, I'll accept that as a friendly amendment to add the annotated copy as well.
And so can we have that motion read back, please?
It's in like 3 parts. That council forward a letter to the Minister of Municipal Affairs outlining the town of Whitecourt's absence of collaboration and good faith in developing an intermunicipal collaboration framework, and forward suggestions and options to the minister for resolution, including timeline information and annotated copy of town of Whitecourt's ICF.
Thank you.
Awesome, I can't believe you wrote that fast. Okay, so a motion on the floor, any discussion on that motion? I know we've had a pretty fulsome discussion, but if that motion triggers anything further?
The only, it's not really discussion of the motion, but I would like to see a copy of that annotated. So I think after this, I'm gonna make a motion that council receive a copy of the annotated.
Councilor
Just
Bush?
one quick comment, given where this is at going into the, or back to the minister, could you just give us, or for the people watching, how many ICFs we're involved with, just so I have an idea, this is just the only one that we have problems.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, so we have 7 or 8 that we had to draft ICFs.
7 other one.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we have 7, they're all completed, and a couple of them are voluntary, like the one with.
No, they're all.
Well, it's not an ICF, sorry, but we have a funding, the agreements that we just passed with the town.
Yeah, they're not ICF.
They're not technically an ICF, but there's a, yes. And this is the one we're having trouble with, so the town has one. We got one to pass. So, okay, the motion's still on the floor. Anything directly to the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? So that's carried. With that, I think we are, Councilor Dean, go ahead.
I move that council receive the copy of the annotated ICF that came from the town of Whitecourt, that was annotated by our lawyer and sent back to their legal counsel by the end of the day.
Okay. Any discussion on that one? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. We were gonna break at 11:40. What's next on the agenda here? Correspondence. Let's do correspondence. Anything on the correspondence and information items? Item 9.1. And if not, I'll accept a motion. Councilor Williams.
I'll make a motion that council accepts the correspondence and information items as circulated.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Financial recovery plan. How long do you need for this, Alicia?
Your worship, members of council, I can make it very concise. It'll be dependent on council questions.
Okay, I'm gonna stop at this point right here, so our next agenda item is gonna be 10:1, and we'll start with Alicia. But we're gonna take a break for lunch, as we're scheduled at 11:45 anyway, so we'll do lunch to keep us on schedule, and then as soon as we come back, we'll get right back into item 10.1. What do we need for lunch, like?
Half an hour,
30 minutes? Okay,
pizza and salad.
30 minutes, so we'll be back at 12:10. 12:10. And I'll wait for
good to go.
All right, we're back from our quick lunch break here, and we left off with item 10.1, the financial recovery plan update, October 2019 to July 2022. And Ashley, you're going to take us through this.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Just one notation I'll make before we start in checking the balances of our 2022 outstanding taxes as of this morning. We were at a 94.34% collection rate, so there has been additional monies come in since the report was ran last week for the agenda package. That change is not a result of any of the folks on the monthly payment plan because those payments won't run again until the end of the month. So it's a good news item there. The document before council takes you through the financial recovery plan that was put into place in October of 2019. It identified wanting to replenish our reserve funds. If you look on the right-hand side at June 30th, the cash in bank estimate of the monies needed to go through to the final year, the bad debt allowance and the two 1.4 liabilities set up. Those will be able to be hopefully finalized at year end and any monies that we've allocated for and anticipated for that are reduced will, once we know the finalization of those numbers, those funds will also flow into and feed our reserves, as well as the 2022 ICF numbers once it's finalized. Currently segregated in the bank, noted as reserve funds, is just over $3 million. A large portion, or approximately half of that, came from our provincial education requisition refunds that we received when we participated in that program. And as those monies came in, we identified and they were put into reserves. And we're estimating that we should have the forecasted $6.3 million to add to reserves for the end of the year, putting Woodlands County back on some more solid financial foundation with money in the bank for future projects. At that point, if there's any questions from any members of council, I'll be happy to answer them as best I can.
Okay, any questions to Alicia? To Ed, sorry, through the chair?
Seeing none, I move that we accept the financial recovery plan update as information.
Okay, motion on the floor from Councillor Dean. Any discussion on that motion? All right, looks like it's working, so all in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Now, at this point, Melissa, this is your last presentation to us, right?
Correct.
Okay, so we have a little something for you here because I understand that you are, I won't say greener pastures, but you've decided to take an opportunity to get a little closer to home, so that's totally understandable. And yeah, I just wanted to get this on behalf of council.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for your service and your hard work, and I know that you've been through a lot in this here.
It's a decision with mixed emotions, definitely made from a personal perspective. I very much enjoyed my time at council, or pardon me, time at the county, working with this council and former council, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Alicia.
Okay, item 10.2, Service Tracker Monthly Report. Mr. Frank.
Your worship, members of council, the report is provided to you. I'm just trying, my internet is not the greatest. And if there's any questions in regards to the report, be more than willing to answer.
You have a question?
Not a question about the report. Have any of you guys had requests from residents that don't know how to find it? Don't know how to find the tracker? So I've had a few, and I always just go and send them the link. But I'm wondering if we can, it's not a priority thing, but can we make it a little more visible somehow? Is there, can we put it on the front page?
It is on the front.
It's on the front page at the bottom.
At the very bottom.
Okay, submit service request.
Yeah,
So maybe we should have it flashing.
You have to go
Yeah,
through it
I
to
don't
get to the
know.
website.
And you know what, I'm guessing it's harder to find on your phone, right? If you try and find it on your phone, it's a little
if
more.
it's an iPhone, it actually does not display, you can't see the service tracker, you gotta turn the whole thing sideways.
Yeah.
Once you turn the phone into landscape mode, then you'll actually see the service tracker, but if you're in portrait, it doesn't show up.
Yeah.
Councillor?
And just kind of to that, even if you don't go straight to the website, you can just Google Woodlands Service Tracker, and it'll take you right to that.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
They can promote.
Okay, good. I'll pass that on.
Councillor Wilhelm?
I was hoping I'd have one report that didn't have Whitecourt East in the highest amount of requests, but looks like I won again this month. Just wanted to pass on, and again, this is always anecdotal and it's subjective from the residents. Just that they would like, and we can see here in the report, like the majority of our requests fall around grading and washboarding on the roads and the road maintenance. And as we come into this season where we have so much additional rain than we've ever had before, I know administration is always focused on it, but to make sure we're focusing on planning and preventative maintenance on the roads as instead of being reactive, try to be a bit more proactive. There's just been cases where residents have called me asking why portions of roads have been graded, but other portions of roads haven't been done, and then they've talked to the grader operators, and the operators are like, oh, I'll come back later and finish it, type thing. Again, this is all anecdotal, but it's comments from residents that probably isn't reflected in some of the service request stuff, so that's all my comment on that.
Well, and I think an important thing to note from this is that when you look at the service tracker, excuse me, it really does point out that the majority of our issues in service delivery is through infrastructure and the 3 R's, roads, roads, and roads. So, the faster we get into a financially viable situation, the sooner we'll be able to implement a little better level of service on the roads. So, and once council agrees to change that service level. So, anyway, that's it. Councillor Cush?
Just kind of going off with the service tracker, I know a lot of residents, especially in the winter when it comes to plowing and stuff, are always wondering, where the graders are when they're kind of working. I know our equipment, we were talking, I don't know if they still are, but at one point they were GPS. Is it possible to even have a map and kind of show, just districts, or so that's something that the residents can go onto? Obviously not, live time, but, but at least, at the end of the day, like an update, they can kind of show areas that were done. So if they're in an area that's not there, they can at least see their progress is getting to where they are. It's just something maybe to look at for the future. Then you can have it even alongside with the service tracker for people if they're going with, for complaints because roads aren't done or whatnot. They can take a look and be like, okay, well, these areas have been done, and they're moving this way. It might give some residents peace of mind instead of calling and wondering when or where.
Yeah, your worship, through to Councillor question, absolutely can develop anything. It's just a question of when and how we do it, right? I know from my previous experience with another rural municipality, we actually had a 2-hour delay that showed the grader. And then once the residents figured that out, they would then stop them and the whole bit. So we actually had to remove it off because they were the odd person.
Yeah,
I should say
an
they
update at the end of the day or something, so they can see the area that was.
Yeah, so, but yeah, I'm sure we have that capability. I know the software that we're using says that they can have links to update where the graders are, right? where your delivery is, yeah, so. We'll investigate.
Okay, Council Cush.
With that, I'll make a motion the council accept the monthly service tracker report as information.
Okay, motion on the floor from Council Cush. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. So that brings us to council reports and questions. I'll start with Councilor Williams.
I don't have much, this is the quietest it's been for me since, being in this role. Only thing I've been really up to besides, talking with residents is, the Ag Society of Forest and Wind, just go down prep and help them get that, anything I can there. And, yeah, that's literally about all I've got going on.
Okay. Any questions to Councilor Williams? Councilor Prestige.
It's been fairly slow. I had an NPC meeting. It went well. And we had our victim services meeting last night. And probably some of you have heard the new victim services report that came on the news yesterday and today. It looks like they're changing the whole system. It's gonna be 4 boards throughout Alberta. We are pretty much from Edson all the way to the territories border. And I think West Lock is be about the limit to the east. So there'll be 1 board. Don't know how it's gonna work yet, it's all fairly new. Looks like, from what I'm reading, is there's gonna be a year transition to the new system, so probably within a year, we won't have a victim services board here in White Court, which will be sad.
Really dilute the services when you make such a large area.
Yeah. So, the other thing, we ran into some problems. Blue Ridge Lumber is behind on hauling wood to the mill. And Highway 658, they cut the shoulders off, and there wasn't enough room for the log trucks to get through because they're 10 feet wide. So the mill wanted them to go down the Blue Ridge Hall Road, or the Blue Ridge Highway towards White Court, and south to the Nojack Road. So they got a road use agreement through their administration, but the residents weren't informed. It's probably 30-40 trucks hauling on that road, loaded trucks. Blue Ridge Lumber went and gave the residents a letter saying they were gonna haul, but quite a few of the residents weren't home. They had no idea, and all of a sudden these trucks show up and they're hauling. I was talking to one of the residents in his driveway, and the truck went by. It was so dusty I couldn't see on the other side of my pickup. It was that bad. So we had a meeting in Blue Ridge at the community hall board, set that up, and we got some ground rules. They had to water the road, they had to put a grader on it. And Blue Ridge Lumber was fantastic working with us. And they just calcium the whole road now. So it really worked good. But with that, I'd like to make a motion that we bring back our road use agreement to G&P meeting, just to have it so the residents are more informed when there's a major disruption on the road.
Okay, motion on the floor from Councilor Prestige. Is there any discussion on it?
So that was for review and discussion, right?
Review and discussion of the road use agreements.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything further from council? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried, so we'll be talking about that at G&P. You're probably not done, no? Go ahead.
No, another one is our remuneration, or
Remuneration.
remuneration policy. We originally did it for, training was $15,000 a year. During COVID, we cut it back to 10,000, there was really nothing going on. I went to 2 conferences and I'm over my 10,000 already. And that's just 2 conferences. And I don't know about the rest of you.
And just, I don't wanna, I think it's 3 conferences, then you're over the 10,000. Your conferences were about 3,000 apiece, so.
No, I only went to 2.
There was one, the RMA thing was another one.
You also get paid for that, part of that, right, so.
No, I thought. Okay, but, now that COVID's over, we should bring that back to the 15,000. Cause I'm not the only one that's gonna run into that before end of the year. And we cut our salary back during COVID from 50,000 a year to 45, and I think it's time we bring that back to 50,000. I've just seen a report that inflation is at 8.1%. It's getting very hard to do things. So I'd like to make a motion to bring back our, I can never say that word. Remuneration policy back to GMP.
So council meeting.
Yeah, council.
Council meeting or?
Council's remuneration
To a GMP.
to a GNP.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any discussion? All right, all in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. You're keeping up with all this, Warren?
Yeah.
Yep, good. Okay, checking. Okay, any questions for Council Chris? All right, Council Kush.
Couple of things there, had the Anselmo Ag meeting just before the Canada Day. Just kind of, they had a bunch of whatever bonfires, everything kind of set up there. 4-H in the area through the Anselmo Ag, they also had an appreciation dinner, whatever there, as sponsors of that program. It's a great program. They obviously had a bunch of awards were donated by Woodlands County for the kids, and it was greatly received and appreciated. We had our MPC meeting, which again went pretty quick. It was good, and I had one other thing, just again for kind of the public and media watching this, but we tried again with the Whitecourt Library Board to move another contract for funding, and again it got turned down. We have tried multiple times, and unfortunately with other roadblocks with the ICF and everything, and then again it got put off. We have, I guess, we had been putting ourselves out there and trying to make this kind of to work and help fund them. Unfortunately, what's in the media makes it look like we're not doing our part again. But I would like to make a motion for August 17th at our next council meeting to bring back the discussion on the library funding again for the Whitecourt Library.
Okay. And that's at the council meeting,
At
correct?
the council meeting.
All right.
So a notice of motion then.
Notice a motion to bring to the August 17th council meeting discussion on the Whitecourt Library Board funding.
Okay. Any discussion on that? All in favor? That's carried.
That's all I got.
Any questions to Councilor Kush? All right, Councilor Dean.
Like everybody else, it schedule's a little later this summer. June 28th, we had our Economic Development Committee meeting, and largely it was a wrap-up of the site selector and just kind of some to-do lists over the summer for our Economic Development Officer. We'll reconvene in September. On June 13th, or July 13th, I attended Tim Hortons Camp Day, and that's I don't know if you guys have been involved in that before, but it's just it's a nice way to give back to the community. People are really receptive. Largely, what I did was greet the traffic that was coming into the drive-through and explain that Camp Day was on and that they had an opportunity to donate if they wished, and people were very receptive to the idea, and it was a nice way to, I saw lots of residents, you know, lots of people from my area and certainly others that I saw. So it's good to get out there and be visible. On Monday, just this past Monday, along with 4 other councillors, I attended the Whitecourt Town Council meeting just to see how the their adoption of their version of the ICF went. And a couple things apart from that I took note of. One was during their the reports and questions section, there were numerous public appearances by their, you know, whether it was Tim Hortons or they were going to a golf tournament in Edson put on by the Edson Town Council or Canada Day festivities. There were just numerous public appearances by their council, and I know we're working towards making sure that invitations that come to council are before council so that we can see if council is available to do those. But I just wanted to reiterate that point, that I think you know, one of our jobs, if you will, as a councillor is to be visible and have contact with the public. The other thing that I took note of was that they have on their agenda an item called public input, and I think that topic was bounced around here. Maybe I'm wrong. So they had nobody there. No members of the public that wanted to address council, but they had on their agenda an opportunity, and I'm not sure how much time is allotted, whether it's 10 or 15 minutes, but I've had a couple of members of the public ask me whether that's something that we would consider, and it would have to go into our meeting bylaw, I'm sure, in order to adopt it. But we've added quite a few things to the GNP, next couple of GNP meetings, but I don't want to lose sight of that, and I would like to discuss that at a future GNP meeting, but I don't necessarily need to make a motion. I'll just bring it up next council meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, your worship members, through to Councillor Dean, we do have a public participation policy that we could add it to the GNP just for discussion, as well as the procedural bylaw does have to come back because the reference to mayor is there, so we have to correct that as well. So,
Right.
so that can come back to that, and then, because on the procedural bylaw, there is the order of the council meeting, so if you want to have a discussion to add public participation, you could do that as well, so.
Okay.
Well, maybe I'll make a notice of motion then. I'm not necessarily going to attach a date to it, but that the public participation portion of our council meetings gets reviewed at a future GMP meeting.
Okay. The procedural bylaw, right? Or policy. That's policy or bylaw?
Their procedural bylaw is the council agenda, and we have a policy on public participation.
Right. So you need both of those.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
we show council both.
Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? You okay?
My knees every time.
I don't have mine in, that's why I take it out.
We'll put it in the budget to renovate.
Any questions that he's hitting is, he's getting a brewer.
Lower.
Any questions to Councillor Dean? Okay, Councillor Wilhelm.
Much like everyone else, it's been incredibly quiet the last couple weeks with regards to committee meetings and council meetings and social events. I was away for much of the Canada Day festivities and everything that was going on around there, so I don't have a whole lot to report. We've had a good summer so far, and I hope it continues on in that manner. That's all I have to say.
That's just Councillor Wilhelm. All right, Councillor Kulkin.
Yeah, just, it's much the same, not as much going on. Did attend an ad hoc meeting with Heather and James Aiken and a group that wants to start looking at how we do the celebration for the 200th year anniversary for the old Fort Assiniboine next year. So that is in motion now. So they're gonna start to designate certain groups to and see who wants to participate and what they wanna do. It's been an ongoing virtual meetings with growth. We ran into some issues. The fellow that we were going to hire for the executive director position found his dream job and went elsewhere, so we're looking again. So it puts a lot of pressure on the board, because we've got a lot of things going on right now that we need to get done to leverage as much funding as we possibly can from the provincial government and the federal government. So that's all work that's being done by the board, mainly Mayor Jabush and Walter Proichus and myself. So it takes up quite a bit of time. Other than that, there has been nothing. I'd like to say a great big thank you from the family of Doug Bork for lowering the flags, and they did that as well in Swan Hills, because he was a big part of the recovery that was up there. And I'd just like to say that in reflection, a person doesn't realize how much one individual can change the face of a municipality until you start looking at the history of the time that he spent and the responsibility that he took on and the time that he committed to it. And so I really want to send the family really wants to say thank you to the county for acknowledging that. Other than that, it was an interesting meeting on the 18th at White Court. It was short, sweet, and what we expected. So,
Any questions to Councillor Colkin? Okay. Brings me to me. At the county level, I got the pleasure of going to both the graduation ceremonies for Hilltop and St. Joe's High School. And I got to give a short speech because I don't blame the kids for not wanting to listen to me. But it was a great ceremony, and it's funny because I actually got to kind of reflect on where I was in 1988, and what was kind of waiting outside the walls of that school for me. So it's certainly a big step for them, and it was really good to see the kids there. And my daughter graduated this year as well, so it's kind of a special day. The one thing that I did want to touch on is, there's two things actually, but the first one, I'm just going to kind of cheerlead the municipality a little bit. I think that we've got some good news coming. We've got a great summer. We've got some nice weather in front of us. We've got a policy now that we've just taken on with the, now I can't remember what it's called. What used to be the block party.
Rural community
Rural
connections.
community engagement.
Connection.
Rural community connection. I will get there. So with the rural community connection fund that's available, there's still lots of summer left. Get out, volunteer, connect with your neighbors. Let's put this the last 2 years of I don't even want to say the word though, but we'll put the last 2 years behind us and start building those connections in our community again. And I'll end it off with a notice of motion, and and this doesn't have to go rapidly either, but in my time on council, we have had probably 4 or 5 events involving the flag, and we don't have a policy that's in line with how to handle that just yet. And I think it would be
September 7th.
lining up with one of our strategic priorities on the organizational excellence end of things to get a notice of motion to bring a policy like that to a governance and priorities meeting when we get time on the schedule so that we can have a look at it. I think that showing respect in that way is very important, and having a policy that guides the process will greatly help us. Are there any questions on that motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. And are there any questions for me?
Not for you, but I should have mentioned this. I believe Saturday is the summer fun day at Blue Ridge Rec area. So please come down and enjoy it. It's a good time.
I'll be there.
Invite families or whatever. You meet a lot of new people and run into a lot of friends that you've met over the years. It's a good time. So welcome everybody.
You got a barbecue set up down there and everything?
Yeah, hot dog.
Okay, good.
Versus me peeling hot dogs all day.
All right.
I'm good at it.
I'll-
It's not what he called
I'll accept a motion to adopt the reports and questions as information. Councilor Wilhelm.
I'll motion that council accepts the council reports and questions as information.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. That brings us to Mr. Frank, CAO report.
Your worship, members of council, family fun days checked off on the list. If you haven't registered for the Pembina Zone meeting on Monday in Edmonton, please do so. Let them know so that they have their numbers. I think tomorrow's the last day to let them know that you're attending. The other items is the dealing with personnel matters in regards to the resignation of the two employees, being Scott Webb and Alicia. We have retained a hiring firm to recruit for Alicia's position. Just to be aware that that is a difficult position to retain, because there are a number of municipalities currently looking for financial people. We've also retained an individual that is familiar with Woodlands County. Andrew World has filled in on numerous occasions over the years, and will be sitting down with Alicia and I next week to understand the process, where we're at with everything, and my expectations from him. We also will be announcing very shortly the new admin assistant that will start August 15th, just prior to the next council meeting. And then ICF.
Any questions to Mr. Frank? Go ahead.
You were referencing the RMA zone meeting. I didn't see anything in my email about that, so I don't know. I need to.
Yeah.
Weird, eh?
Yeah. You get it directly from Michelle
Edgerly.
Edgerty.
Edgerly.
Yeah, this is the first I've heard about it. So
No, I didn't get it either.
It's the 25th at 9 a.m.
You gotta go way back, because they usually technically send it out shortly after the last Pembina meeting, and then about a month, right? But we can send it, yeah.
She did send an email out in that time frame, but you were supposed to vote because the chair wasn't going to be there.
Yeah.
And there was some sort of voting mechanism that didn't appear in the email I got, or I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah, the
And
last
so-
one I got was for meeting minutes.
And I think it says in there that
There's a voting button, yeah.
yeah, but that was the last one.
All right, I just forwarded everybody that email, I think.
Yeah, you still have time. I know that you might have other plans.
Any other questions to our CEO?
Can we find time to look at this annotated document
Probably
before
have
we
to
send
do
it out?
We'd have to do a special meeting or,
Because I gotta say, there's a number of comments that I wouldn't be in favor of Mrs. Robert, or
Yeah,
Mr. Roberts'
your worship, because that's a legal matter, you'd have to go in closed session to have a
Right.
discussion in regards to,
Okay.
that's why it's marked private and confidential.
right. Okay, with that, I'll accept a motion to accept the CAO report.
So,
Councilor
so I move that council accepts the CAO report as information.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? And then we just have adjournment. Councilor,
I'd like to motion to adjourn.
okay, no discussion on a motion to adjourn, all in favor? Any opposed? That's carried, we stand adjourned.